Dear listeners, welcome back to the History on Drugs podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Campos, and I've got another great interview for you today. This one is with one of the leading figures in our field, that is the field of alcohol and drugs history, David Herzberg. David Herzberg is professor of history at the University of Buffalo. He is the head of their program in drugs, health, and society, and he's also the author of a couple of great books. His first book, Happy Pills from Miltown to Prozac, and his most recent book, White Market Drugs, Big Pharma and the Hidden History of Addiction in America. This second book won the Bill Rohrbaugh Prize from the Alcohol and Drugs History Society for the best book in the history of alcohol and drugs. That book came out in 2020, and it's full of really important discoveries. Among other things, David found that drug maintenance, which scholars traditionally thought had died out between the 1920s and 1960s, actually was alive and well in the United States through private physicians during the middle of the 20th century, the 40s, the 50s, etc. He also argues that in the 1970s, we actually had a pretty good drug regulation system where people had access to both sedatives and stimulants, but not too much access. And this was a moment where we were getting close to the right balance, in Herzberg's opinion. He also found that the much demonized Harry Anslinger may have prevented an earlier opioid epidemic simply by being a bully to pharmaceutical companies and not allowing them to put out drugs that they claimed were non-addictive opioids and that sort of thing. Just like OxyContin, totally non-addictive. In any case, David's work is really, really great, and I'm telling you a lot about it now because we spend, the first 2/3 of the interview not really talking about his work, but really talking about how he got to his work, talking about his life, which was really fascinating. This was not by design. I just asked him a couple questions about his background, and the story just got better and better and more interesting. Some wild twists and turns. There's definitely some drug stuff there, and just wild American adventures in the 1980s and 90s. It's a really great story, I think. David thinks it's boring. I think it's hardly boring, and I think you'll agree with me. So that's coming up for you. At the end, we do talk a little more shop. We offer some advice on how to talk to your kids about drugs. We talk about whether drugs are special or not, what makes drugs different than other commodities, and various other things. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right. So, all the stuff. Please like, subscribe, all that. Share the podcast. Get the word out. I'd appreciate it. My guests would appreciate it. Check out our stuff on social media, Instagram, YouTube. And that's it. That's all I got for you. So here is my conversation with David Herzberg. I think you're going to enjoy it. About this, that you're from Vermont. I did not know this. Where in Vermont?
Well, to start it honestly, I was born in Texas.
Oh.
And moved in Galveston on the island. And then moved to Shreveport, Louisiana when I was 2, and then to Little Rock, Arkansas when I was 3, where I lived there until I was 10. So bonus points if you can guess. Okay, born in 1970 in Galveston, moved to Shreveport in 1972.
Yeah.
These are places with large VA hospitals. For my dad was a Vietnam era medic guy working at these hospitals. So that's how that happened. And then they got jobs at UALR. My dad and my mom.
Wait, what's that?
University of Arkansas Little Rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows UALR.
Oh no, come on! Everybody knows UALR.
All right.
So and then it was.
Wait, what did your mom do?
Geneticist.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
And early and hard fought pioneer as a woman in the a quote hard science field like that, hard-headed, capable woman. And so we were in Arkansas for a while, and for a number of different reasons, they decided to leave Arkansas when I was 10 in 1980. And I know one of them had to do with me, which is that me and the Arkansas public school systems didn't get along very well.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
How come? What do you mean they didn't get along?
Well, I was a rambunctious, talkative Jew in a deep South public school where they still stop for Christian prayer time, and so I was tortured. I was locked in a closet without a light one day for a whole day, and I was oh
my God.
In second grade, I didn't get to go to second grade because I was. I mean, to be fair, I was pretty badly behaved, but there was a. They gave my parents an ultimatum, like he's either suspended, or he can spend second grade up in the reading loft, but you'll have to supply more books because he's tearing through the books in the reading loft. And so I spent second grade in the reading loft, which there are worse things. And if you were in an Arkansas public school in the 1970s, it probably spared me a lot of
grief for sure. Yeah. Oh my God.
So, and I think they were concerned that I was, being directed down a not thriving pathway.
Yeah, with good reason.
Yeah. So then we moved to Vermont, and then to answer your original question, we moved to Norwich, Vermont, which is in the Upper Connecticut Valley. It's right across the river from Hanover, where Dartmouth is. So it's a wealthy little area.
Right by White River Junction.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. White River Junction is in the Upper Valley too. Why do you know White River?
Well, so we go to Vermont every summer. We vacation kind of north of Montpelier. But when I lived in the Boston area, Cambridge, I used to drive up to the White River and fish every once in a while. Oh. And so White River Junction was like the entry into Vermont and the White River.
You drove from Boston to White River when White River is like locally famous as the Amtrak stop, so you didn't take the train?
No, well, I had to bring my waders and my fishing equipment.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'd rather drive. So anyway, White River Junction, we've driven through there a gazillion times.
Okay, so you were the visiting Flatlander when I was growing up.
Yeah, and I always thought of, because of, we love Vermont so much, and I always thought of Dartmouth as a place that must be an amazing place to teach because it's right there at the...
I would guess that it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not, UVM has got its advantages, but it's right on that lake, and it's so cold.
Uh-huh.
And I say this as someone who's lived in Buffalo for 20 years. I mean, it's cold.
No, we once, when I was first getting on the job market, we had, so I'm still in graduate school in Cambridge, and we went to do our fall, leaf peeping thing in Vermont. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, we're like, let's check out Burlington, because there was a job actually at UVM. And so I said, let's go check out Burlington. We hadn't been there. And so we went, and it was like, mid-October. It was like Columbus Day weekend or whatever. And it was so cold and windy already, and October. Dark and gray. And I thought, and I'm from West Michigan, so exact same thing as Buffalo. I'm used to the horrible gray winter. But I remember thinking, I don't know, man, this is like pretty grim. I mean, I would have happily taken a job there, but it's a long winter. Yeah.
No, and there's a hunkered down feel. I mean, I like Burlington a lot. It's a beautiful little town, and Lake Champlain's amazing. But there is that kind of braced for the cold feeling.
Yeah.
Even it feels like to the architecture.
So Norwich, right? That's the town.
Yep, Norwich, and then we moved to Sharon, which is a little town of 200, which is about 25 minutes northwest of Norwich.
Okay.
But I was still, Norwich didn't have a high school, and the town we moved to didn't even have an elementary school at that time. It was too small. So I was able to go to Hanover High School. So I went to school in a different state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. With all the kids of the university professors and that sort of thing, presumably.
Well, yes, but also all the kids from a catchment area. So we had kids from Scuttney, we had kids from Windsor. Like we had all the rural kids from these places that weren't big enough for schools. Now it's different. I think you have to pay a lot of money to go to Hanover High School. But at that time, it was just a catchment school. Yeah. And so I'm sure there were professors' kids there. I guess, and technically I was one of them, because the job that drew my parents away from Arkansas was position in Dartmouth. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much better than Arkansas, presumably. They go better for you.
God. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, when at some point when I was in college, I can't remember how it happened. I was trying to see what was up with my old buddies from elementary school, and what I was able to tell at the time was that all of my friends were either in jail or recently out of jail, except for one who was a police officer. And I was like, I feel really glad to have
gotten out of there.
Split for the North. Yeah.
And you were bookish, obviously.
Yeah, although I didn't know that, because in Arkansas, and maybe in elementary school, I don't know, but most of the grades you get are for behavior, not for content stuff. So my report cards were terrible in Arkansas, and I didn't think of myself as like a smart kid. I thought of myself as like a trouble kid,
right?
And so when I got to Vermont, they treated me like I was smart, because they only cared about the content grades or whatever,
right?
And whereas I had been pretty rebellious in Arkansas, I was quick to behave when they patted me on the head and told me nice things and said, "Oh, you're good." I was like, "Oh, hey. That's great. I'll behave."
Yeah, that's great. Do you think you would have been like, they would have diagnosed you with ADHD or something? If
they did.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, my parents were not. My parents were on the hippier side of life, and they didn't cotton to that in the 1970s. They weren't interested in getting me medicated, but they did. But the school authorities did try.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you think that was legit, or do you think it was they just didn't like?
That's a big question.
They didn't like a too talky Jew.
I mean, well, lots of things can be true, but I mean, that's a whole conversation about the meaning of ADHD. Like, what does it mean to say it's legit? Like, are you asking, do I think that it is a medical condition, or are you asking me, do I think that people exhibit those behavior patterns, or it's a complicated.
I guess so. I guess I'm just asking if you think you were actually ADHD. You may not. So
I didn't. I think I was like a one kind of normal kid. Like I was full of energy, and full of enthusiasms, and I was pretty impatient if I was bored, and I really didn't like to be told what to do. And I don't think I'm describing something that is weird. It's not the only kind of kid there is, but it's definitely a recognizable kind of kid.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do you think this influenced you at all later on when you write about selling sickness and then like inventing problems that have to be medicated? Do you think it had any influence at all?
It's a good question. And, it's hard sometimes to parse out what your conscious and intentional influences are and what things are unintentional. It's not like I knew that I had, that they, it wasn't ADHD in the 1970s, it was hyperactive. I knew people thought that I was like a little out of control, but nobody told me like, oh, people think you should get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
I kind of think, I haven't actually thought this before this moment, but it's precocious. That's not the right word of my parents to know not to tell me that at the time because of that, Ian hacking, looping kinds. Like if someone had told me that there are a lot of people who think you have this diagnosis, and then that might have shaped my self-perception.
Sure.
And instead, whatever, I just thought I talked too much and didn't have any self-control, which at least that's not as sticky, right, as a diagnosis.
Of course not. Yeah, no.
So maybe, I certainly observed firsthand, like, I was a bad kid in Arkansas. Like, I was a bad kid and I was headed for trouble, whatever. My parents thought I was smart, but hey, parents. And then I was the same guy, but like 3 weeks later, I was like, when I first got to a Vermont school, like I had a meeting with the principal, and the principal was like, "Do you want to skip a grade?" And I was just totally flabbergasted because I was, I was a bad kid, and so I just spluttered and was like, "Well, why would I want to do that?" And this in turn threw him off because he wasn't used whatever, and he was like, "Well, some kids just like to do that when they go to a new school." I still remember him saying that, and I thought it sounded like such horseshit. I was like, "That sounds really dumb. No, I don't want to do that." And he's like, "Okay," but so I was able to see not only like how categorizations could change dramatically when I hadn't changed, but then I observed like, the last principal that I had a one-on-one conversation with, like I leaped across the desk and bit him in Arkansas because I was really upset about the circumstances that brought me to his office. But like I was able to see how it changed me to be treated differently. So that did, I mean, I guess I would say that at a broader level than diagnosis, but just thinking about categorization in general, it certainly, like I couldn't avoid being aware of how dramatically it had impacted me.
Yeah, sure. That's good training for the historian.
I guess so. Yeah. Good training for alienating you from any place that you might, feel uncomplicatedly connected to. And
right. So you were a good student. All of a sudden, you're a good kid. And this continues all the way through high school. You just stay good,
Yeah, I mean, I think in high school. So I don't remember. How old are you? I can't remember.
How old am I? I just turned 52.
Okay, so we're pretty much the same age. So that I think of this in. I don't know what future cultural historians will think about how accurate this is. But I think about it, there's a before Wes Anderson movies and an after Wes Anderson movies. And before Wes Anderson movies, being a nerd was not at all remotely cool. It was like get you beaten up and all that stuff. So I was a nerd in the old days. In the old sense of like that was bad. It was not secretly cool at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, was that being a good kid in high school? I'm not sure. Like in my high school, the good kids were sports heroes and all this stuff. And me and my friends I was a theater guy, acted in plays.
But still a good student.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I was a good student.
Yeah.
Right.
And you were you into history early on?
A little bit, yeah. I liked everything. All the classes. I was really big into math and science too. As a matter of fact, for a few of my friends, the science teacher, we had our bio teacher had like a PhD from Yale. He was teaching in high school, not sure why, but he got a grant to teach a special extra advanced bio class for me and a few friends in my senior year. And so, I was really into all that stuff, loved math and calculus and all that business, kept taking those classes in college too. But in history, we did have this Mr. Bohai. Mr. Bohai, man, he was he was this, talk about categories. He was this kind of uncategorizable person who had worked in, I can't remember which, he'd worked in inner city schools for a long time. And then he believed that he was in danger. He said, and this, teachers didn't say this kind of things to students, but he was like, I had developed a pathological hatred of white people. He was white because of the circumstances of this inner city school in which he taught. And he became so angry. So he got a job in this like 99.9% white wealthy community teaching us high school kids. And he was very open about how like he was obsessed with trains, and he gave lots of money to Pat Robertson because it just helped him. He like gave lots of money to TV preachers because it like helped him feel good. And so he was like this weird mix of, right? Yeah. Like fascinating dude. And unsurprisingly, he assigned a college textbook for his high school history class and had a kind of attitude that us small town kids didn't like see a lot of. And so he was a super interesting guy. And he definitely, if looking back on it, I would definitely say Mr. Bohai was a big influence. And as a matter of fact, one of his sayings, he would say, what is thought is often more important than what is. And that popped up at various times all the way down the road in my education and career.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that fascinates me most.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean, not just that they're different, but that what's thought is actually more important.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It actually becomes real, basically, because it's thought. Might as well be real, right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So where'd you go to undergraduate?
Well, when I graduated, I started out by going to Harvard, but I was really miserable there.
Oh, really?
Socially miserable. I was lonely. Turns out I'm not a Harvard man. It wasn't. But what are you going to turn down an opportunity like that when?
Of course. Yeah.
So, but after a year, I dropped out
and
spent a year doing various things, and then
was it too snobby? Like, was that basically it?
The biggest thing was that I was not. I'm a late blooming person, and my birthday's in September, so I was young and a late bloomer. I wasn't actually ready to be in college.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I mean, whatever. I was ready intellectually. I did fine in all my classes and stuff, but I wasn't socially ready.
Yeah.
But then at Harvard, at that time, I was introduced to this new verb, comp. Do you know the verb comp?
Only in a musical sense. I don't think in this sense. Yeah.
That's that there were all these, in college, there's all these wonderful activities you can do, but you don't do them at Harvard. You comp them. Now, what does it mean to comp? Comp is short for you compete for being one of the people who get to do it.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And so every damn thing, like it was just a bunch of I went to a high school. It's a public high school, but it was a feeder school for the Ivies, right? So I did not, I didn't know what the SATs were. I got into Harvard because I was, the top student in the class at a Harvard feeder school. I didn't get there because I got there because of unearned privileges, not because I did stuff, but I was going to Harvard with a ton of people who they were the kind of people who got into Harvard. I was not.
Right.
And so
you mean they had gone out of their way to do 1,000 extracurriculars and that sort of thing and to compete to get in, and just happened to be in a good spot.
People with ambitions, like people who tried stuff.
Right.
And I just wasn't. That just wasn't me.
Yeah.
And so, you had that mismatch, and maybe if I'd been a little more socially mature, I could have figured out how to handle that. But instead, I was just really lonely.
Yeah.
I just didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
I don't have any friends from that year of my life. Most places where I've been for that long, I still have some people that I know, but nothing. So, and then, the summer after, I was hanging out with my old high school friends, and everyone was swapping stories of college. And I was like, oh my God, they're all having this wonderful experience. And I was just so miserable. I was like, fuck that. I'm not going back there. I won't do it. I want to have what they're having.
Sure.
But so first I had to just spend some time wandering around, doing other things.
What'd your parents say about you dropping out of Harvard?
Well, they learned about it the same time that I did. It's funny, but this shows the kind of maybe unreflective person I was at that stage. We were having dinner at their friend's house, and their friends were like, "How was your first year at Harvard?"
Uh-huh.
And up until that point, I hadn't really thought about it. I'd been hearing these stories from my friends, but then at that moment, I was just suddenly filled with this in total certainty, and I just said, "I'm not going back." And my parents had dropped their silverware, and of course the friends thought that of course we must have discussed this or whatever, but it was brand new to me. It was brand new to my parents. Yeah. My parents were people who didn't, and I think they had a lot of parental pressure in this way and that way in their lives, and they were really dedicated to the freedom of their children. So I don't even really know what they thought, because they weren't gonna, the one thing I know is that they made me buy health insurance. Huh. They were like, okay, you can go off and travel to random places in the West Coast and do whatever it is that you're doing, but you have to have health insurance so that we don't, have to worry about that. But they had a very light touch.
Yeah.
Other than that.
Yeah, you couldn't just be on their health insurance, or they wanted you to pay for it, so you had a sense that that was the real world.
Pre-Obamacare. If I'm not a student,
if you're not a student,
how could you be on your parents? I was 18. I mean,
I didn't realize. I thought it was like up to 25 or something.
Okay. No, that was Obamacare. Man.
Oh, okay.
That was. No, I think about that a lot because I got the 3 kids and they were able to stay on our insurance till 26.
Yeah.
I always, every year, I'm like, thank you, Obama.
Yeah, totally. Oh, wow. So, okay. So you had to do some wandering. What was the wandering?
In classic teenage fashion, I got a map of the U.S. and I put little pins of every city where I had either family or knew someone, and then I found the place that was the farthest away from all of them, Eugene, Oregon, and I just went to Eugene, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
With no plan at all, but a little bit of money saved up from my summer job tending bar at Peter Christian's Tavern in Main Street in Hanover.
Ah, interesting. So did you just drive out to Eugene?
I did drive away, which was a service at that time where if people were moving across the country, they could hire couriers to deliver their car. I was a New England kid, so my sense of how vast the country was was a little hampered. So I did drive away to Los Angeles because I'm like, well, it's on the West Coast.
It's a lot closer than here. Yeah, a lot closer there than here.
Yeah, and But also I was like, oh, geez, Los Angeles has like 11 youth hostels. I'll just drop off the car and walk to the nearest youth hostel.
Oh my God, that's great.
And so when I say that like this was the age of free range parenting, like my parents did not know that was my plan. They didn't have a conversation with me about how incredibly stupid, apocalyptically stupid it is to drop off a car in a wealthy suburb of Long Beach, which, the kind of people who can afford to do that. And then like you have your backpack and you're in Long Beach, and with an idea of using your Michelin map to walk to a street address of a youth hostel. I mean,
yeah.
And you're 1,000 miles south of where you were planning to go.
Totally. Yeah. Very long way from Eugene. And this is what must be like 1988 or 89 or something? What year are we talking
89,
about?
89, 90.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So, did you find the youth hostel?
No, I didn't. I just was, had the cosmic good luck. I remembered that I had a cousin in Los Angeles. Remember, I wasn't, this was not one of the places I was going to go to, and I got some change. The people who I delivered the car to were kind enough to drive me to a nearby mall, and I called my parents, and they called this cousin of mine, and so I spent 8 or 9 hours at the mall sitting there waiting until he was out of work, and then he came and got me, and I stayed there for a couple of days before I don't know how I heard of the Green Tortoise bus line. Have you heard the Green Tortoise?
No.
This underground, legendary kind of hippie bus line that went up and down California and also went into Mexico. And the seats turned into beds, and it was relatively inexpensive. And it was like, created this little community along the thing. And I remember having heard of it, and then I called 1-800-555-1212, like remember the old information number? And I was like, do you have a number for Green Tortoise bus lines? And so within a week or so, I was able to hop onto the Green Tortoise bus and go to Eugene.
Wow.
It's just like a hapless and like misadventures of a like not ready for primetime kid that I don't think would really happen in the same way in today's world.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's kind of, I can't imagine what my parent, like why wasn't this frightening?
Yeah.
more frightening. I don't know.
That's great that they let you do it. I had my colleague Willard Sunderland on here, and he tells a kind of similar story that after college he had this dream that he was just going to go like get on a merchant, marine vessel or something. He just goes down to New Orleans and starts hanging out in bars and thinking he's going to, and he's just like, I was such a moron. and at some point, some sailor, I think he was Scandinavian or something, like he's like, you're out of your mind. This is never going to happen this way. So wait, I wanted to ask you though. So when you said that you were mapping out where all the people you knew or were related to were, I thought you were going to say, and that was my route around the United States.
No.
But why? So why are you, I mean, it sounds like you grew up in a pretty happy family, and, your parents are, it sounds like they're, really good parents. Like, why did you want to get away from your family so desperately? Family and friends, like what?
I mean, this is going to have to be retrospective because I wasn't I thought a lot about stuff, but I wasn't very skilled at self reflection.
Yeah.
But I think that that because I was a slow developer, but I had a lot of clear skills, a lot of things that happened in my young life would be I would do things, and then really quickly people associated with those things would try to get me to commit and do those things a lot more, because whatever it was, like, I played fiddle, or I got a temp job, that pretty soon people would try to draw me into doing that more. Same thing that happened why I went to Harvard. Like I applied to a few schools, but then the Harvard one was like a last minute thing that I can't remember. Maybe it was my dad was like, you should do this. And it was like, it was very much on a whim. But that I think that maybe I had a dim sense that I needed to do some growing up and some developing. And I felt like it was very difficult to tell what I wanted from, the people around me all seemed to develop ideas about maybe what I ought to be doing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so maybe it was just trying to give myself a little space.
Yeah.
I think.
Good choice, I think. That's interesting. Yeah, who knows?
I have no idea.
Yeah, totally. I think it would have been my instinct to go to wherever I could stay for free and, somebody give me a bed. So that's really interesting. So you get up to Eugene, and what happens in Eugene?
Well, the first thing that happens is that I don't find a place to stay for about a week. And so I'm, it's a pretty temperate place, and I'm just like out on the street for about a week. But I had saved up some money, and I eventually figured out how you get an apartment, and I got an apartment, and I got a job. And for the first while, like I had learned a lot of quick life lessons. Like I still remember, like it was hard to get a job as a 18-year-old with no skills. And I applied for various jobs, and I got an interview for a dishwasher job. And I worked in restaurants for a long time, worked my way up from, I was a dishwasher and a vegetable prep and a server and a bartender. So this seemed right to me, but but I just filled out the application. Honestly, it was a big mistake if where you were going to school at that time technically was still Harvard, and you're applying for a dishwasher job. And so I would get the interview, and they were like, it was really quickly clear that what they really wanted was to ask questions like, so this has actually happened before. I remember this question. Someone takes a shit on the floor of the restaurant, and I asked the dishwasher to clean that up. If I asked you to clean that up, would you clean up shit off the floor for me, Harvard boy? And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, that's, what I didn't understand. I mean, am
I being paid for it?
I didn't have a lot of perspective on stuff, and didn't understand why that seemed to be such an enjoyable question to ask. Yeah. But so I finally did get a job. The job was as a tree planter, which, if we were in the West Coast, like that, those words are like, I've been applying for jobs for a week and getting nothing, like nothing.
Yeah.
And then I called up at the tree planter job, and there was a pause, and the person was like, are you sure you want this job? And I was like, hell yeah, of course I want the job. And I was like so excited. And she was like, okay, have you ever done this before? No, never done that. Okay, here's what you need to do. You need to go to Sears, and you need to go to the work boot section, but don't buy any of the boots you can see. You have to talk to a sales associate or whatever they called him at that time, and say you got a job as a tree planter, and they'll get you the shoes that you need to be a tree planter. And I was like, well, that's, that because there's some like badass shoes that whatever. And and then they were like, and then you're going to be in the parking lot of Woody's Barbecue at 4:30 in the morning on Monday. Okay. And and they're like, you'll be out on the unit for a week. So like pack your stuff. And so I go, it's in the it's in Eugene's sister city, which I think is Springfield. And Springfield at that time, unbeknownst to me, is the crank capital of the Northwest.
Say something like that is probably
yes. And so I'm walking to Woody's barbecue, and I'm like crunching on needles and plastic things, and in the parking lot of Woody's barbecue it's like a day labor market, right? Where like I am going there to meet Cal, who is going to be like running my unit, this guy Cal, but there's just like a whole bunch of guys not looking like they're doing great, hanging out in the Woody's barbecue, interviewing for like whatever day labor positions there. And Cal is this old hippie, like a deadhead dude who drives a purple school bus. And and he's like not all the way there. So like we get in, me and this crew that I'm working with, we get in the school bus, and he's got like some kind of mysterious errands that have to be run first, and errands of the sort of like I've got to pick up some lumber from like this weird random sketchy place and then drop it off at this location where I am doing this thing that nobody quite understands what he's about, like plans that are only one toe in reality, but the lumber exists, and so this happens. And then we drive in this purple school bus, like, over into the Cascade Mountains. The air super heavy with pot smoke, and the job is so bad that it's kind of like a informal alternative to jail for petty criminals. So like the cops pulled over they called the work vans crummies. A cop pulled over the crummy because there was a headlight out or something. Yeah. Rolled down the window, and this, huge billowing cloud of pot smoke, goes out long before these things would have been legal. And the cop just backs away. And he's like, "Get your headlight fixed," and goes back to the car, because it would be an improvement in some of these guys' lives to, go to jail, given the nature of the work. Like one dude on the first day, like had a heart attack, like a minor heart attack. He just got like pulled up to the top of the hill, and he just like sat there for the day's work to finish. And he spent the rest of the week in the hotel, like as the cook. And that was the extent of the medical care for his thing. And, and on the drive to work, conversations would be like, I remember, whatever. There weren't a lot of conversations like this. This one stuck in my head, but I remember one of the guys being like, "You read about that 7-Eleven killer?" "Yeah." "My little brother, dude. That's my little brher."
Oh my God.
No, just be like, "What am I doing here?" I'm out in the middle of the Cascade Mountains in a purple school bus with these dudes.
Yeah. Planting trees though.
Yeah, planting trees. And it's hard labor. Like, that you have a belt with like a bunch of, it's either seeds or saplings, or you're putting on these little cylinders to protect them from the deer or whatever, but just like a lot of weight. And then you're like, it's like you're in some Cool Hand Luke or something. You're like, anytime you want to do anything that's like you're getting hot, you want to take off your shirt, and you have to yell out, "Taking it off here, boss." And then they'll be like, "Yeah, taking it off." It was very laborious, and it was in the mountains in clear cuts. So the company would bid on replanting the clear cuts. So the lowest bid would win the bid. So then they make their money on, doing it fast to recoup the costs. And so it's up in the mountains in clear cuts. So number one, oftentimes you're going through bramble, like, with burrs and thorns. And then it's also in the morning, it's like fucking cold.
Yeah.
And you've got it's finger work. So you're not wearing gloves and you're like doing things on the icy ground and stuff. It was miserable work, but it paid, like at the end of each trip. And then, my friend Tim, I made friends with this guy Tim, and we got back out of the first week, and he was looking at his check, and he was like, "What are you going to do?" And I was like, "Oh man, I don't know. I'm just going to go like sit down, like rest and read a book or something." And he was like, "Yeah, well, so me and some friends are going to take this check and buy a bunch of crank and fix my truck. You can come and join if you want to. And I was like, I don't know a damn thing about fixing trucks, Tim. I'm just going to go and like be my nerdy self somewhere and read a book. And he's like, all right, fine. And then a couple of days later, Tim calls me, and he's really excited. He's
I bet.
Like, and he's Tim. Yeah, that's a good point. And he said, Dave, you're gonna love the next unit. You're gonna love the next unit. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Because we'd done a few different things. Depends on the unit, and he was like, you're going to love this. Okay, first, you're going to have to make sure, like, get all your guns and make sure you've got, like, ammo. And I'm like, okay. I was like, Tim, I don't have any guns. And he's like, that's weird, but whatever. Okay, we'll figure it out. But it's wholesale gopher slaughter, dude. He says, the way we do it, you got to kill the gophers because they're going to chew the saplings or what have you, that like you scope out, you find all the holes, and you plug up all but 2 of them, right? And then we all get our guns and we like go around, like we set up positions around one of them, and the other one we throw in smoke bombs, right? And then as the gophers run out, you blow them away. Oh, I was like, so wait, like this group of people, I'm aware, is like fucked up 100% of the time. Like it's drugs, a constant thing, and there's going to be clouds of smoke, and we're going to be
and a bunch
firing
of
weapons. I was like, yeah, Tim, that sounds so great. And then I moved out of Eugene. I was like, if this is the only job I can get in this town, like I need to get the hell out of here.
Good choice. How long did you last in Eugene?
I was there for like only a little more than a month.
Oh, really?
Like it was not long. Like that came pretty quick.
All right. So you get out of Eugene. So is this making you start to think that maybe school wasn't like the worst? Maybe school would be a good option again?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. No. I went to Portland.
Uh-huh.
And Portland was great. I got a room in what I guess they would call an SRO, so a single room occupancy, like a house that had like 10 different rooms in it.
Yeah.
And I got a job at Machismo Mouse, which is a local healthy fast food chain that served steamed like Mexican American food, like tacos and stuff. And Machismo Mouse.
That's great.
Yep. And there, that's Portland's a nice city.
Sure.
Had a nice time. But eventually I moved back to the Upper Valley, got back a job as a bartender at Peter Christian's, where I'd worked before, and I rented a mattress in the house of a Dartmouth student, so that like during the day I'd lean the mattress against the wall, and so it wouldn't be in his way. This is to get it. It was much cheaper that way, and then at night I would just sleep on it, and that was a great little stretch of life because the bartending didn't start till 5 p.m. and I'd work until midnight or 1, and then the restaurant crew were awesome people, and we would just have drinks together while we were counting up the money and walking into the bank or whatever. And then I could sleep in until noon and then still go hiking or do a bunch of stuff in the afternoon where, in New England is beautiful.
Yeah.
And because I was like only like my nightlife was at the bar where I worked and was giving people free drinks, it was very cheap. It was pretty good.
Nice.
Pretty good situation. Yeah.
All right. So what leads you back to college? Like,
well, I guess I always assumed I would go back at some point. And then, but I was pretty haphazard about things, and I looked at I was like, maybe a smaller place, maybe I'd make more friends at a smaller place. And some places were like, yeah, you should apply and come here. But one place just said, if you want to come here, just let us know. You don't need to apply. Like, you're a straight A kid from Harvard, and this is going to feather in our cap. Just come. And I was like, bingo, I'll go to the place that doesn't require me to apply. I was a deep thinker, right?
I know. This is great.
So I went to Wesleyan. Which is really like a great, fancy pants school. Mm-hmm. And I had a much better experience there.
Where is that?
It's in Middletown, Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So Wesleyan. And so how do you end up, were you a history major? Like, how did you end up becoming, deciding you want to go to graduate school?
Well, when I first went to college, I planned to be a science major, but you had to take an array of tests, placement tests, and unsurprisingly, for someone who ended up just staying in the academy permanently, I'm really good at taking tests, and so I tested out of like intro science courses and I was like, I went to them and was like, wait, I need the intro course, and they said, actually, no, if you tested out of it, you can't take it, and so. I guess there's a running theme of impulsive behavior here. I was like, well, screw it. Then I won't do the sciences. I'll major in the humanities instead. And so I still kept taking math because I thought calculus was cool, but I started to take other like random courses. And I think I was maybe a little bit headed in the direction of sociology when I had a sociology, this is getting more embarrassing the more I tell it. I had a sociology professor who I got really upset at, and like he seemed really annoying, and so I switched to history.
That's great.
Oh man, yeah. I could have used more life advice. Anyway, so
I can totally see myself having had the same kind of impulses, though I might not have followed through because I would have just, I don't know, not followed through. I was a not follow through, but I would have been like, well, fuck them. I'll just do something different. You know, what do I care, right?
Yeah,
I get that part of it at least.
Okay, well that's good. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And then it turns out Wesleyan had great history professors. It was awesome. Yeah. It was. And I didn't plan. I kind of thought maybe I might go back to school, but I didn't do that immediately. I was.
You mean go to graduate school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. I was in kind of deep with this woman who graduated and moved to New York City. So I moved to New York City and worked as a temp and get into various kinds of trouble there. Yeah.
And so, all right. So when you make the decision you want to go back to grad school, like what prompts that?
I don't remember. I actually really don't remember. Oh, I mean, I remember. I already told you the other day. One of the little contributing rivulets is I was working as a temp.
Yeah.
So, and I was working as a temp for those. What is it? IYKYK. If you know, you know. I was working for American International Group, or AIG, which was soon to become the poster child of one of these stock market meltdowns. But as a temp, and I cannot explain why I was reading this particular book because I didn't have any specific interest in drug history at this time, but I had become interested and was reading David Mustow's The American Disease at work on my lunch break. When a coworker walked by and was like, "Hey, what are you reading?" This seemed like a very normal question to me, and I was ready to answer because, of course, that was a normal question to ask. And I opened my mouth, and then he said, "A book?" And I was frozen. I said, "Yes," but he has already walked on, you know, and I was like, "Whoa, I need to," and I realized how it kind of gelled how out of place I was, how weird I was in this place at this time, like how unlike all of the people around me I was. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I can follow the book to a place where they're more like me. Like maybe places where people are reading books are going to be more weirdos like myself.
Right. Do you remember how you got did you just pick it up in a used bookstore or something because it looked interesting? Or
no, I don't remember. I know that I got it on purpose. Like I didn't just see it on the shelf and think, oh, maybe I'll read this. Now I know that I became curious about that for whatever reason, and then bought it. I don't barely remember how. Like I don't remember bookstores in New York. Like I don't remember hanging around in bookstores, and I possessed it like it was mine.
Yeah, and there was no Amazon, so you must have gone somewhere and bought it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was that era, right? Drugs were really, really interesting. This must be 92 or something by then, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
93.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right, and so you decided to go to grad school. You apply. I mean, did you have any idea what you're doing? Did your parents help you with this, or did
No.
you?
No, not at all. I applied, and my undergraduate honors thesis was a historiographical analysis of books that had been written about the I'm going to forget the name of the Massachusetts town that voted to abolish its high school in some year. And there was a brief moment when historians were fascinated with the question of, was universal public high school education a progressive triumph that was good for, the lower orders,
right,
or was this a agent of social control that was resisted by the lower orders? And they wrote all these books about it. And so I did this historiographical analysis of it. So my default assumption was, well, I'll do history of education.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I applied to do.
That's so funny. That's the same stuff I was doing when I was thinking about going to grad school for history.
Really?
Same kind of stuff, reading about these questions of, was the the rise of the American public school system, was it just an imposition to or a kind of racist or xenophobic imposition to try to turn these Catholics and that sort of thing into good Protestants and that. And I was fascinated by it. And there was now I'm never going to remember it. It's been years since I thought about this, but there was a book written by a couple of sociologists on this, I remember, because I remember my professor saying he thought it was fascinating that the book I liked the most wasn't by the historians, it was actually by the sociologists. But it was a pair of people, and they wrote about it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about Maris Vanafskis and...
That's not it, because Maris Vanafskis was at Michigan, which is where I was.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And I actually did my...
no shit.
Yes, and I did my undergraduate, thesis kind of class with him. But,
no way.
Yes, but that was before I had gotten the education bug. So my paper was actually on the Civil War with Maris Vanafskis. And yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
That is a crazy coincidence. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so you got, how did you get...
How did I get into the education thing?
Yeah.
Oh, because I had just been an okay undergraduate student. And I would start, it was kind of like you. I probably could have used a couple years planting trees in northern Oregon to kind of get my wherever part of Oregon to figure things out. So when I started college, I was kind of unmotivated, and I liked going to class. I liked doing the readings, but I didn't like studying, and so I was a kind of middling student, always getting B's, where I could have got an A if I would have just studied for the exam, but I wouldn't study for the exam. And I had this whole ideology about it that I was grades were stupid and this kind of thing. But it was really just I was kind of lazy.
Is that a but? Maybe it's maybe it's and.
Yeah. But by the end, I was starting to get kind of growing up, and I was starting to get serious. And when I graduated, I was thinking, I should figure out a way. I just met. I was starting to get serious with this girl. The girl wound up being is now my wife. And I was like, maybe I should figure out a way to earn a living. My plan had been to go abroad and just teach English and travel around. And because I had studied abroad in my junior year, and I wanted to just go back. And so I was like, I should get a teaching certificate, and then I can do that with a history degree, and then I'll have. So that's how it. And the readings in the teaching certificate program, I thought were really fascinating. We started with this book. What was it called? The Something Panacea. Do you remember this book? The Something Panacea. And we had this very charismatic. It was like the introductory class for all the new students, and we had to read that book. God, what is it called? Anyway, the Something Panacea, and the professor was really charismatic. And these issues of these questions about the ethics of education, that sort of thing, I thought were really super fascinating. And so as the program went on, it turned out I could do a master's in education, and do but focus on history. I guess it was called social studies, but focus on history, take classes in the history department, stuff like that. And so that's when I started doing actual research on this stuff.
So you have an M.Ed.
Well, no, I didn't finish it, because before I finished, I was actually working on the thesis. Before I finished, I decided I wanted to do a PhD in history, and I applied and I got in. And I was supposed to finish the MA thesis before I went off to do the PhD, and I just didn't finish it. And I thought this would someday come back to bite me.
Well,
And now
there's still time.
Yeah, there's still time. Yeah, but it never has. But my thesis was on. Interestingly, I was already interested in the drugs thing. My thesis that I didn't finish was on drug education at Michigan.
Oh, see, now I remember that was a ripe topic, but I remember I had the same thought at some point in there. I can't remember when. I think I was already in graduate school, but thinking like, man, just a history of anti-drug messages to kids would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I went to like the state archives in Michigan and looked at stuff from the governor's office and that sort of thing. And I wasn't finding that much interesting stuff. And so I think that was part of the reason I never finished either. I was just like, man, this is kind of, and now I'm going on to do this other thing. Can I get away with not doing this thing? And I basically, that was the last thing I did. That was kind of the last gasp of my former student self, which was to not finish the paper at the end of the term. That was the last one of those. Yeah. So.
That's funny.
Anyway, so where'd you end up going to grad school?
Well, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, what a place.
Oh.
I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, I went in the fall for the first time. I'd never been. I'd always wanted to go because it's supposed to be like Ann Arbor. And I loved it. And it was it was a lot like, Ann Arbor's gotten really ritzy and very affluent. And it's kind of lost the flavor it used to have. The Ann Arbor I remember from the 80s and early 90s. Madison reminded me of that. When I was there. Now I was there in like perfect fall days, and this fall.
Madison's it's a good 4-season town.
Yeah.
Like all 4 seasons are very forthright. They are exactly what they are. It's not, but it's funny you should say that because Madison now, like when I went to grad school there, people who know Madison will recognize how incredible this would now sound. But I bought an abandoned house on the Near East Side, like that, it had been gutted and abandoned and just kind of left there. And this is the kind of thing that with some help from an investment from my parents into the down payment, I was able to get, and then with a friend kind of work to fix it up. But like now, I mean, that house must be worth $1 million.
Yeah.
So that there is a way in which Madison has gotten ritzy,
sure
but it probably like it's a few steps behind maybe Ann
like
Arbor.
10 years behind Ann Arbor or something in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Madison. They offered me money to go there. What seemed to me like an enormous amount of money. It was $15,000.
Yeah, that's what I was getting paid too at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed, and it was a lovely place to go to grad school. I mean, it was the faculty in the history department now, when I look back on it, like was in transition. Like the Americanists were all, it was a bunch of old white men like nearing retirement, and then 2 women's historians. And so what happened to me is I just got really intellectually turned on by women's history because they were like, I mean, my advisor, may he rest in peace, an awesome guy, great intellectual, wonderful advisor to have, but there was not a lot going on in that department. But there was shit going on. The women's history program was, they had Gerda Lerner there, who was like the original women's historian. She was emeritus at that point. They had Linda Gordon and they had Jean Boydston, like 3 of the smartest people you will ever walk into a room and be around. And they just like peeled off my scalp and scrambled my brains. It was amazing. But like, the department didn't have a historian who studied race in America. Like that just wasn't a thing that they had. This is like, they had like 50 faculty.
Too.
And so this gives you an idea. Like it was on the verge of a turnover.
Yeah. How'd you get into the drugs thing?
Well, there are 2 different versions of that. One is the conscious version that was what I thought, how I thought I got there. But then there's another story that's like a little hard to believe wasn't playing a role as well. So the one that I knew about was basically when I was in college, one of my closest friends was this guy, Alvar. And Alvar had a really serious drinking problem. He was also just this brilliant and charismatic guy. And his claim was that his drinking problem was self-medication for a really serious, what we would now call a panic disorder. But at that time, it was just like anxiety and what have you. And that he was a really creative and interesting dude. And one of the things that he would do while drinking into the night out of his, whatever that 2-liter handled jug of Jim Beam, he had come into possession of all these old psychiatric journals. Like they were stacked up in his living room, and he would go through and look at the advertisements for the drugs that were supposed to cure his problem. And he was just really witty, and he was just torching them and skewering them for all of their falsehoods and all of their, all of the way that the happy ending that they sold. And the one I remember is it was for an antidepressant that one of the main side effects was impotence in men. But the before picture was of this, like middle-aged balding white guy, and he's got his bowling ball in his lap. And then in the second picture, he's like holding up his bowling ball, like you couldn't, be more obvious. That's like this drug helps this guy get it, get it up again. Yeah. But the main side effect is that you can't get erection. And so, he tried all of these drugs, and he was like, and he was like, that one you can't get hard on, but much wittier. Like he didn't say anything that dumb. He was like, anyway, you can probably tell I'm using the past tense. He didn't make it. He died a year or two after graduation. And it always stuck in my head, this contrast, this tension, this contradiction between like his experience and these advertisements. So when it came time to pick a project to do for a PhD, I hadn't done anything that would prepare me to do that project. I was just like, what? I think I would like to do a Peter Kramer had published Listening to Prozac, and that even made me think more back about this and more skeptical of this crazily optimistic vision that Peter Kramer was writing about. And I was like, I'm going to do a history of this, and I'm interested in what the impact is of thinking of this particular kind of suffering as like a medical condition instead of spiritual or whatever, all the other ways you could think of this kind of suffering. And that's what I wanted to do. And Paul Boyer, my advisor, wonderful man, he's like, well, okay, you might want to go and talk to, how about maybe talk to Judy Leavitt over in the History of Medicine department? Because this seems like the kind of thing that maybe they would have insight into. Sure. And I went over to talk to Judy Leavitt, and who became one of the main advisors of the project, but she's asking me questions about, what do you want to do? And she was like, okay, so help me understand your history, your background in the history of medicine. I'm like, I don't think I've read anything. She's like, well, have you read? And I can't remember what book it was that she literally, when she realized that not only had I not read it, but I'd never even heard of it or heard of the guy, she just whomped her face down on the desk in front of me and like uttered this groan of like, and like, now I understand this, this PhD student comes in like, I'm going to waltz into this field that you train people for years. I have not had 2 seconds of training, but I'm going to do this project. Yeah. What do you think? And she said, well, you can, if you want to do this project, you need to take classes in the history of medicine. Now I had reached the point where I was ABD. Yeah. And I'd taken my qualifyings. And so this ordinarily would have meant that I couldn't do it because you know how your tuition payments go down dramatically when you're not taking classes. But I was lucky enough to have a Javits at that time. And so the Javits is this 4-year federal fellowship that's like, royalty money. Like they pays everything and gives you a $15,000 a year. And it didn't matter what your tuition was. They just paid it. So I was able to go back. Oh, nice. And I took classes from Judy Leavitt. I took classes from Ron Numbers. And so that's the story that I was living consciously as I understood it to be, that it was all about psychiatric medications. But there's another story that in retrospect, like I can't believe it didn't play any role at all, which is that one of the kind of maybe less usual aspects of when I started to go to graduate school is that I was also just starting at that time on a methadone program in Madison, because Madison's too small a town to be able to buy heroin in 1995. And so, I was a white kid gruncher living in New York City in the early 1990s. You do the math. I was part of that little generation of people that encountered heroin and became someone who used heroin. And then and so I it's hard for me to believe that didn't play a role, but at the time it didn't consciously play any role at all. It was just this, I went through that methadone program, and I think I was their first graduate. Like, their goal wasn't to get people off methadone, but I was, if I wasn't going to be part of the drug world anymore and not enjoying the aspects of that life that I enjoyed, then I didn't want to do that anymore. So in retrospect, it seems like there must have been something about that.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you that I never drew any connection between them, because I didn't think that what I was doing was drug history until 2000, until near or after graduation, the first time that I really thought about it was for an ADHS conference in Guelph. And the reason, I guess I haven't changed that much. I was like, oh, look, a conference right nearby where I live. I'll go to that. And I can pitch this as a drug piece, because, it's not really a drug piece, but I can pitch it that way. And then I discovered that, oh yeah, it's totally a drug. This is totally a drug project. And I found my happy home there in Guelph.
Yeah, well, you were surely thinking in the way that almost everybody thinks, which is like pharmaceuticals are just, this completely separate category from drugs, in quotation marks, right?
Yeah.
And of course, your most recent book totally destroys that whole idea, which is really terrific. Wait a second, though. So you were a heroin user. I had no idea about this. Were you using regularly from the early 90s until the early 2000s when you started doing methadone, or? No,
I started graduate school in 1995. So I started methadone in 95. So it was only a couple of years. And,
right.
Yeah, and I was I was a quote marks addict. And it's actually one of the reasons why I didn't reveal this publicly until in a co-authored book recently. The main author, Helena Hansen, is incredibly persuasive, and she persuaded me that there would be some value of various different kinds of telling that story. And so, because in the book, anthropologists include them in their own books. When historians, we don't do that,
right,
for good reason. We're don't have anything interesting to say about ourselves, right, in general. But she really wanted to have this, each of the co-authors write a personal story, and I was very resistant. And eventually she was like, what the hell's going on? Why are you so resistant to this? If it's a boring story, just write a boring thing. What's the matter?
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, Helena, fine. Let me tell you, I don't want to lie. I'm not going to tell my story as if somehow I didn't use heroin, but I'm not really sure that I want to do that. So, after a while, I talked about it with some friends, and it's long enough. I wrote a letter to my parents because, I was able to, nobody knew this. I even paid for the methadone program in cash, so that I wouldn't have to have it on my medical records. So, it was a relatively brief period of my life, just 2 or 3 years. In retrospect, it provides a lot of, it was a pretty meaningful stretch. But I really did not think about it with my intellectual brain until the first ADHS meeting, when I had to pitch it as a drug.
Yeah.
I just didn't think about it at all.
Were you an injection user, or
no?
Just snorting?
No, that was the early 90s thing. That was when the purity went up, so you didn't have to do that.
So wow, interesting. And so what was the methadone experience like? What's that like? I've never talked to anybody who's done methadone.
Yeah, it was a lifesaver. When I was trying to buy heroin in Madison, Wisconsin, which back before the internet revolution, you just couldn't do. And, one of the guys that I hung out with there was like, you're never going to make it here, man. You need to get yourself on a program. I was like, what do you mean? Get myself on a program? I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what he was talking about. And he explained, like, you can go and get treatment at this place. And I was like, that sounded too good to be true. I didn't believe it, but, he gave me the address and stuff. And, it was weird. It was weird in a bunch of different dimensions. It was weird to be in a place where, like, I was a relatively, like, I was unusually privileged person being there, not totally unique, but unusually privileged. And I was in pretty good shape. Like, shit, I was there because I was getting money to go to graduate school.
Right.
But they also, what that meant is that things that I felt nervous about, or maybe a little like ready to be shamed for, like, they reacted quite well to. And they were, and it in some aspects of it, it was perfunctory. Like the therapy was pretty perfunctory, and I don't blame them. Like, I didn't have, like, if you're triaging somebody, you would have triaged me. And one of the things I did react a little bit badly to the discovery that they didn't have any plan for me getting off methadone. Like, to me, in my mind, I was like, if I'm done with drugs, like, I just want to be done with them. And that they considered that, rightfully, according to the best practices, they considered that a risk, and they didn't. And, but they eventually cooperated with that. And it was going from there to graduate seminars was it was a real disjuncture, I guess.
Bet, yeah.
And then somewhere in there, it's a complicated story and the timing is slightly complicated, but I, at some point, after graduating the methadone program, and after some various perambulations that, I found myself with a couple of kids, but my wife had left me. And so I had a couple of kids and I was still in graduate school, and I was on county welfare assistance, because of being a single parent. And, so I got, childcare assistance, and briefly, I could get the government cheese. And so it was a similar kind of feeling of going from the welfare office to the graduate programs. And I mean, it was really, it just kind of, it provided potential fuel for questions that nobody in my graduate program was asking at that time.
Sure.
So it was just, it just left me a little bit alienated. I mean, I had kids, you're raising kids, you're not available for the full range of grad student life.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself in the terms of, like, man, it's hard to compete for friends with people who don't have kids, like, that they're so available all the time, and I'm so not.
Sure.
And my ex was not totally disappeared. Like, she took them sometimes for briefly, and eventually that situation worked out better, where she was able to take them for more of the time. But yeah, it was, that in retrospect, I can't believe that whole part of my life didn't have any intellectual impact. But at the time, I mean, if you had asked me, I would have just been like, no, it's totally separate. Like, grad school is my route out of all that. I'm going to, fool that I am, I think this is going to lead to a job, and I'll, like, have a decent life. This is my path, to, this is my path out of that, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I have to say, it doesn't surprise me that much, given just how big of a gap there is between people thinking about pharmaceutical drugs and drugs, especially back then in the early 90s, in the wake of the crack epidemic and everything. So yeah, I don't want to dwell on this. I just, I'm curious, and we can cut any of this out you want to, but you didn't mention drinking or, when you talked about the guys who were using crank, it sounded like maybe you weren't involved. Like, were you like, when you were in Oregon, were you smoking weed on the bus with the other guys?
Sure.
You were? Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I mean, this is a a lasting lesson that I've taken to heart. Like, people may make fun of this, but I'm going to tell you that when I encountered heroin, what I literally thought they were full of shit about cannabis, and this is just another drug. And so I was totally unwarned. I even didn't believe it the first time I experienced withdrawal. I was like, I must have a cold. Like, I literally didn't believe.
Yeah.
Like, very basic, obvious things about it, because the messengers had been so incredibly undermined by being so catastrophically, obviously lying about something else. And, in retrospect, I'm not that. I mean, I know the stories that I've told might make it seem a different way, but I'm like a cautious guy. Like, I definitely would not have used heroin if I really believed. Like, I totally wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I'm not I wasn't that unhappy. Like, I just was like, oh, here's another fun thing to do. Yeah. Really.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so when I think about bad drug education, like, to me, like, I feel lucky to escape with my life from bad drug education. And my drug talks with my kids, and people will, friends will, we're all just trying to feel our way through it, but they'll ask me, like, will you talk to my kids? Give my kids a drug talk? And I'm always just like, look, the basic drug message I tell to teenagers is, don't fuck them up when you're a teenager, because you're going to want them later in life. Like, you're at an age where it's really hard to develop a healthy relationship with drugs, and really easy to develop a bad relationship with drugs. And if you fuck one up, then you probably don't get to use it forever if you make it out. And so, like, take it easy and preserve them, because, when you're 50, dude, you're going to want that drink at the end of the day,
right?
Whatever. So, but just to be clear that, like, these are good things. Don't believe them when they, like, don't get mystified by your drug education programs to think that they are telling you the truth about these things, and then, like, have this revelation that they're lying. Right. And then you can do, like, instead, like, my watchword is make drugs nerdy again. Like, they're not sexy. They're not.
Yeah.
They're just, they can be a decent part of life, just like, exercising or whatever.
Right.
But only if you have the right information about yourself and about them and all this stuff. So, yeah, I wasn't a big drug dealer. Fucking hated stimulants. Like,
Oh, really?
I tried them. I was like, I would rather, like, just hit myself in the face with a brick than use cocaine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hated that stuff. Never tried amphetamine because I hated cocaine so much. I was like,
what's the point?
Why would I do that?
Plus, you got to see all those guys doing crank.
Yeah, no, dude, and they had no teeth. I mean, it was all like,
Those warnings were real. I had a similar conversation with my son, not with my daughter yet. She's still a little young, I think, but similar conversation, which is like, look, these are things for adults to, adults can do these things. But you're at the highest risk of having problems when you start young. You're at the highest risk of it becoming, affecting you intellectually. You're at the highest risk of becoming addicted. It's not worth doing when you're a teenager. So just wait. You can experiment with the stuff later if you want to, but wait. And nowadays it's fucking dangerous.
Nowadays. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, it's just not worth it. That seems to have gotten through, I think. But also my son's like, a video game junkie. So I think that's the drugs for this generation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, right. And if you're going to, like, many people are going to gravitate to something, like gravitating to something that doesn't puncture your skin. That's awesome. Gravitate to something that isn't going to, that has a less likelihood of bad outcomes. Sure.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So we've been going a long time, so I don't want to go too much longer, but I do want to talk a little bit about your work, which you haven't talked about at all. So you write your dissertation, which becomes presumably your first book, Happy Pills, right?
Yeah.
About Miltown and Prozac and Valium too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Valium. What do you end up? I told you I wasn't going to ask you to summarize your thing, but now I'm asking you. You told this really compelling story about your now deceased friend who was reading through these ads and how this. Mm-hmm. What did you learn when you actually did the work? I mean, what did you end up finding from that initial? You had that initial kernel of interest. Like, what did you end up finding out about this?
Yeah, for a little while, my tagline, if I'm going to be able to remember this, was it's not what drugs do to people, it's what people do to drugs, something like that. And that, it's a pretty basic insight that that while drugs themselves matter, all of the other stuff matters so much more. And this goes back to Mr. Bohai. What is thought is often more important than what is. That's like, that's for drugs. That's on steroids, dude. Right. but it matters so much. And the kinds of what I learned about at that time and what I became interested in is all of the different ways that drugs are useful to people who don't use them. And the most obvious one is everyone knows, anti-drug wars are, used for foreign policy in this way and used to police marginalized populations in that way. But those are not the only people using drugs to pursue their agenda. And there's, like in that book, I talked about pharmaceutical companies, but also feminists. And also, there's no real word for them, but I guess maybe you would call them patriarchalists or whatever, people trying to recreate male authority after the Depression and World War II. That drugs were just useful for all kinds of people pursuing all kinds of agendas. They could be useful for state builders who were trying to build the capacity of the state to regulate corporations, because it's much easier to convince the public that, the pharmaceutical industry needs reining in if your introduction is a story of a teenage cheerleader who becomes a sex worker because she got hooked on OxyContin. Right. Like, reality is pharma needs regulation long before that and long after that. But people are yawning, when you're like, we need to talk about regulating the pharma, Right. But so anyway, that was the big takeaway, was just the diversity of people who found drug sexiness useful for their agendas. And this was, my more current tagline is "Make drugs boring again," because that sexiness has been at the heart of a lot of public harm. A lot of the harms associated with drugs, whether they are people who use them being harmed by them, or people who are policed around them, or people who are what have you, come from the Richard de Grandpré would call the
cult of
mystification,
the
cultification, the fetishization of drugs as somehow a distinctive category of product and experience from everything else. And the moment you buy into that, if let's say you're a drug historian and you're like, wow, I'll be a lot, you can play into that drug sexiness to get mileage in your career, but you've already screwed up the fundamental task that we're about, which is to bring drugs back into they are just part of what humans do. People who do drug history are doing the same things as people who do business history and legal history and political history. It's the same. It's not even a little bit sexier. It is like literally all of the same people and dynamics and the same arguments. And if we can persuade people to think in a very pragmatic, practical way about drugs, they'll make smarter decisions about them, everyone from policymakers to teenagers. But it's hard because sexiness is so awesome.
Right. Sure. Well, and drugs are different. I like, how about make drugs mundane again? MDMA.
That's even better. Oh man, you're brilliant.
There we go. We got our hats.
Yeah, make drugs mundane again.
Yeah, though drugs are different, right? I mean, drugs, I've thought a bit about this.
Just a bit.
They're related to life and death. They are. Some of them have a capacity to inspire ecstatic experience, a kind of religious experience. You know what I mean? So it's like, they are taken advantage of by various actors to pursue different agendas, but they're especially useful for taking advantage of because they are different, right? So it's hard to just say, they're just like any other commodity. They are in one sense, like from a, in one way, but in another way, they're also different. I mean, we have a kind of visceral response to them. I deal with my students. We talk about this. Why do we have this strong visceral response to drugs? And it's not just a modern phenomenon, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's possible to go too far in the direction that I was saying, although I would say that drugs are not unique in having this kind of special power. Music, another one, dance. There's a lot of things that can inhabit that space. And to me, what it's about, and this is not from learning, this is just, like crackpot extrapolating from my own personal experiences. Like what seems to be especially potent about drugs is the way that they connect people. That, you think of, a person with addiction is like isolated and this and that. But in part, that isolation is distinctive because most, like the kind of drug use you're talking about, tends to be socially connective.
Yeah.
We're awkward animals. It's hard for us to figure out how to like convince someone to have sex with us or whatever.
Right.
And drugs help with that. Drugs tend to draw people together across social boundaries of class and race. That's why authorities get really upset about them, because they can make you comfortable with people that you have been trained to be uncomfortable with. And so when I think about that, like, yes, drugs are really significant for that kind of sociality. And that's why if, you go way back in history, you see drugs connected to, people arguing, that the first communities were formed around common drug experiences and things. But a lot of that power comes from people. And you can, like, while drugs are useful for that, I don't know if they are as uniquely useful for that as the myths would have it. They seem to be like they belong to a category of behaviors and consumables that can be catalysts for human kinds of transcendence. But I think a lot of the transcendence comes from the people. Anyway, like I said, I'm just like, that's just crackpot.
Yeah, sure.
Leaping out
no, I
space.
mean, I agree with the point of MDMA, though. Make drugs mundane again, because it is important. When we fetishize them, we take them out of their context, right? And I mean, addiction itself is. I'm surprised, actually, when you said that you didn't realize you were having withdrawal symptoms. I mean, that's actually that's a really good thing. You're very likely, if you just get over that cold, then you're good, right? I mean,
that's funny. I was at a training. I was at a wine tasting training when this happened, because I was a server at a restaurant, and like they were supposed to teach us some stuff about wine, and so we went in on a Sunday morning, and so I was literally like tasting wine and being like, I guess I'm coming down with something.
Wow, that's funny. Well, that's what a lot of the I talked to David Courtwright yesterday in here, and in his book Addicts Who Survived, there's a lot of those stories where people are like took heroin for a while, skin popping or whatever, and then they get sick, and then somebody else tells them, right, that they're, you got to have it now, and de Grand-Prix argues that that's a crucial part in the addiction process, is actually somebody has to tell you that you're sick because of the drug, and that you'll be cured if you get the drug, and that's when you actually become addicted to the drug, right? That's what I mean.
It circles back to our earlier conversation about ADHD and diagnosis. Like that's, in a way, that's a diagnosis, right?
Right.
And always think about diagnoses as like heavy machinery. Like you don't want to bring, it's like a bulldozer. Like there are times when you need a bulldozer and you're going to bring it in, but there's going to be a lot of collateral damage from when you bring that heavy machinery of that kind of powerful categorization in. Sometimes it achieves what you need it to, and that's good, but you're always going to pay a cost as well.
Yeah. All right. So last thing, just about your most recent book, your great book, White Market Drugs, which I love. I teach sections of. Everybody should read it. It's fabulous.
Thank you.
You're still studying the pharmaceutical world, but now you're more getting into kind of the supply of the actual drugs themselves more than the advertising and the what led you down that road? I mean, I don't know, how did that project, I'm curious about how that project came together, how you got interested in it, how it started coming together, and then then how it wound up being similar, but quite different from the first one.
Yeah. So when the first one was kind of in the bag, but there were still a bunch of things, like it wasn't out yet, but it was all done. I was going on a run in my neighborhood, and like must have been around 2007, I think. And I was listening to the radio news, and 2007, that's when the shit hit the fan in terms of public discourse around the opioid crisis.
Yeah.
And one of the things that struck me was all of the commentators were talking about this unprecedented thing that had happened. It's like, addiction cropping up in places and among people who, like, these aren't like inner city junkies. These are, suburban families or whatever. Right. And I had literally just finished spit polishing a chapter about the Valium panic of 1979. So this was like, within living memory
for sure
of when there was this large public panic about addiction to Valium among suburban housewives and such. And so that was intriguing. But the thing that really got me is that what I remembered from having analyzed that discourse around Valium was that, man, that discourse was exactly the same. They were like, addiction is cropping up in places where it has never been before. Right. These aren't inner city junkies. These are like Carol, a pretty like plane stewardess, whatever. Right. I was like, okay, something weird is going on here, because all the talk is as if this has never happened before. Okay, that's one level. We're sure. Okay, that's one. But they were saying the same things then, and so I sort of was like, well, I wonder if this had happened before.
Yeah.
And I wonder what they said when it happened before. And so then I started to track it back, and I was like, holy shit, like it took a long time to discern that there were three big waves of this. But at the time I was just like, God damn, every decade that I can find, there was a slew of headlines about how, oh my God, addiction has escaped the cities and it's in the suburbs in these pills. And I'm like, so it just seemed like this relentless project of forgetting. And I was like, okay, somebody's putting a lot of work into forgetting that this ever happened. Why?
Yeah.
Who is that? Whose interests are served by this national project of forgetting about pharmaceutical addiction? And that's what got the project going.
And then you tell a whole history of the development of the pharmaceutical industry and its ability to push drugs on consumers.
Yeah, and why? And in some ways, the book is about the failed struggle to create what I call white markets, which are like markets where drugs are legal, like the same drugs that are illegal in the street. They're, for largely one version or another, they're legal in these markets. And it's an effort to build safe markets that are oriented around the idea of consumer safety. So they're not oriented around the idea of no one should be using the drugs, and they're not oriented around the idea of like, whoo, everyone is libertarian utopia. People should just do whatever they want. They're somewhere in the middle. And, ultimately one of the conclusions of the book is that the pharmaceutical industry, with the help of kind of free market ideologues and prejudices around race, are continually able to stymie this project of building safe markets, and they're able to create out of control boom markets like we saw or in the opioid crisis, that then get laboriously and incredibly painfully reined back in by bureaucrats and reformers of various stripes, medical reformers, and this laborious work of reining back in those markets and making them safer is then undermined again by a new round of like, liberate the free market, and besides, only black people get addicted anyway. And so it's this toxic combination of racism and free marketeerism that just keeps fucking up this, this challenged and flawed effort to sell these products that everyone is using all the time throughout the whole process. Yeah. The only question is, are they using them safely or not? And sometimes they're not, and it's a crisis, and sometimes they are, and then people don't talk about them. Yeah. And so it just gets veered off with those things.
Clearly people want access, but like we just can't figure out a way to, consistently do it well.
Yeah.
So, well, great, man. This has been awesome. Anything else you want to mention before we finish? Any last words?
Honestly, I'm just hungry for lunch.
Yeah, all right. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, there you go. Pretty interesting, right? I knew nothing about the drug stuff. Nothing. First time you heard that was the first time I heard that. So there you go. I thought that was pretty damn interesting. And I thought it was important that David insisted we leave it in there. He's not trying to make a big deal out of it, but he also thinks... in fact, I think that's what he thinks. We shouldn't make a big deal out of it. And so that's why it's worth leaving in there. Just don't make a big deal out of it. Some people who have tried heroin and have used methadone become wildly successful, like David Herzberg, writing great books, making huge contributions to our knowledge. So, there you go. I thought that was a fun one. My thanks to David for coming over, hanging out in the basement. Really enjoyed getting to know him a lot better. I've known him for years, but I didn't know all these details about his life. Thanks to you for listening, as always. We'll be back in a few weeks with another episode. In the meantime, take care of yourself, stay safe, enjoy the last throes of summer. I'm already starting to freak out about what am I going to teach the kids in a couple weeks? I don't know. I better start thinking about it. All right. Well, until next time, we will see you around. Bye-bye.